you looking for something different in your life, a change for your future, and just don't know where to begin? Let Florida Career College show you the way. Florida Career College has 10 campuses in Florida that offer hands-on career training in healthcare, business, trades, and more. And they'll teach you the skills you need for a new career, one that you can actually be proud of. Classes are starting now. Text FCC at 474747 to get started today. That's FCC at 474747.
TV party tonight! TV party tonight!
Oh, we got nothing better to do than watch TV and have a couple of brews.
Don't want to talk about anything else.
We don't want to know.
We're dedicated, yes, to our favorite shows!
Oh, my circuits!
Everybody loves Hypnotoad.
Scary dog!
Pearson at Blurnsball.
Futurama!
Good evening. Welcome to TV Party Tonight. I'm your host, the Mandated Reporter, and frankly, I'm mortified. And tonight, our favorite show is Lost in Space.
Which one?
It kind of sounds like, well, I'm getting there. Kind of sounds like Pigs in Space, but no one listening to this podcast is going to get that reference. Lost in Space was a Netflix show. It was first season was 10 episodes. It debuted, I believe, where's the date? April 13th, 2018, and shortly after its debut, it was renewed for a second season. We were finally getting around to this. We were supposed to do it shortly after it came out, but, you know, life. But waiting all that time and absolutely insisting that we do this, and he insists upon me, ladies and gentlemen, making his second appearance in a row, as a matter of fact, here on the Radulich Broadcasting Network. Ladies and gentlemen, from our Canada office, it's David Wright. How you doing, sir?
I don't recall begging to do this. You bubble-headed booby.
You
You calamitous clump. Malfunctioning mess of microchips.
Hey, I know what you're doing there.
Yeah. Well, I thought danger, Mr. Radulich, danger was a bit too obvious.
So, you seem to be somewhat knowledgeable about the history of Lost in Space here, and as far as what it's based on, how the show operated prior to this. This is a reboot of the show that came out, I believe, in 1965. There was a 1998 film, and it was based, in all actuality, on the 1812 novel *The Swiss Family Robinson*, which was also made into a Disney movie, as I recall. So, why don't you tell me? Have you ever watched the '60s show? What you know about the series, and what made you decide to want to talk about this tonight?
Okay, well, I first found out about Lost in Space when I was, in elementary school reading a book on robots, and, every book on robots has something about robots in film, and they talked about the Robbie the Robot in the Lost in Space series. And then, kind of towards the end of elementary school, we got a new cable channel called Space up here in Canada, and as it sort of implies, it was a sci-fi based show, and one of the initial shows they had was the original Lost in Space, so I got to actually see the show. And to be honest, I can't really remember too much of it, but it was kind of mostly, like a family on an alien planet, where, every week there'd be some sort of problem they have to sort out, and it was kind of your typical, 60s, father knows best, mom's not necessarily, incompetent, but, she just kind of stays at the homestead, while the men go out and deal with the problems, right? That's kind of like the most progressive this got was, oh no, there's an alien monster. The girls run back home and the guys come out with the ray guns. Well, we'll get more into that a bit later.
Yeah, I didn't even realize that. I thought Lost in Space was literally they were in space somewhere, and they were something along the lines of like a Deep Space Nine, not Deep Space Nine, Voyager. Yeah. Where they had gone through the wormhole and they ended up on the other side of the universe, and it was going to take a zillion years for them to get home. So I thought it was more of that sort of thing, where for some odd reason they couldn't make it back to their galaxy. I didn't realize they were stuck on a planet
Yeah, that's for most. Like, you rarely even saw the inside of the ship. They were usually just like camped out outside of it.
Overall, I'm just curious. So you watched a little bit of the series. Now you've watched this 2018 first season. We'll get into the sort of the details of it and everything. But I'm just curious, how do you think it compares one versus the other? Are there some things that 2018 does better than the 60s, vice versa? I think they're both kind of just two completely different animals. It's hard to compare. What's your opinion?
Yeah, well, other than the premise, I think the premise was the best part of the original Lost in Space, for the most part. Like as I told you before, I can barely remember any actual plot lines from the show. It was mostly what I remember is Dr. Smith, Will, and the robot kind of bantering between each other. And then there'd just be some sort of plot with whatever the producers could get their hands on in the extra props department. Like Irwin Allen, the show's creator, he was kind of famous for being able to really run a show on a shoestring budget. So, like, if you watched an episode of Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea, another show he made, and they're like having to deal with some sort of sea monster, which is just like a guy in a rubber suit, and then you would have like an episode of Lost in Space where, oh no, there's a monster on the planet, and it'd be the same guy in the same suit. It's just like, hey, we had this guy for a week, so we're gonna make as much as possible out of him.
So our main cast here is we have Molly Parker as the mission commander Maureen Robinson, who's an aerospace engineer. We have Toby Stevens, who is her husband, her estranged husband, who is John Robinson, former U.S. Navy SEAL. They've got Maxwell Jenkins, the 11-year-old Will Robinson, who reminded me a lot of Jake Lloyd. I know this was...
He kind of does.
I was going to say, I had to keep kicking myself like, no, this isn't 2000 and whatever the hell the Phantom Menace came out. Jake Lloyd done growed up in 2018. But every time like he would deliver dialogue, or I'm like, he's not quite as bad of an actor as Jake Lloyd was back in the Phantom Menace, but there were a couple of times where I really did have to pinch myself and be like, who is that again? Is that Jake Lloyd? No, it's stupid. This was 2018.
I cut Jake Lloyd a lot of slack. I mean, he didn't have much to work with director-wise. Sorry, George. But, he did what he could. Any kid of that age, if they said, you want to be in a Star Wars movie, would say, absolutely.
Sure.
No
one's turning it down now. I can't imagine there's a person on the planet who doesn't take a Star Wars role. But Mina Sundwall is the 15-year-old Penny Robinson. And then there's Ignacio Cerricio, who's Don West, who's a mechanic and a smuggler, and kind of a Han Solo type.
Yeah, smuggler with a heart of gold.
Yeah. I missed her. Taylor Russell plays 18-year-old Judy Robinson, who is the biological daughter of Molly Parker, but is the adoptive daughter of Maureen Robinson, who's the adoptive daughter of John Robinson. Which is so funny. They addressed it at least once, which I was glad they did. They just established that, she, her biological father was obviously somebody else. Because there was a couple of times in the show I'm just like, are they ever going to deal with? No? All right. She's an interesting character, and we definitely need to talk about her. Parker Posey, who is my favorite character in this whole thing, plays June Harris / Dr. Smith, who is the psychotic, fucking personality disordered nutjob, who she's fantastic in this. How did she not get an Emmy for this series? Jesus Christ, she's the best part about it. And then we have Brian Steele as the robot, and there's a minor cast backing them up. Now, in the original Lost in Space, it was just the family, right? There were no other colonists or anything like that?
That's correct. It was just the one Jupiter 2 ship, the family, with Dr. Smith and the robot, which was not an alien robot. It was just the robot that was on the ship.
Right. In this case, it's an alien species, which... we'll talk about it. All right, so let's start off with the first couple of episodes here, where we're just dealing with the family, and... There's definitely a degree of there's a kind of a formula that the show operates under, where every single episode the overall arc is that the spaceship that was transporting all these folks to Alpha Centauri, where they were, where they were starting their lives over again and colonizing it and whatnot and abandoning Earth, which they don't ever really get into too much of the history of what happened to Earth. It just seemed to have gone to hell in a handbasket.
We get bits and pieces. Apparently, there was some like meteor crash, and I'm assuming that's set forth like an ecological disaster, and now people are trying to leave the planet before it gets uninhabitable. But we can't take everyone.
Yeah, it seems to be alluded to, and then, well, I think they further allude to the fact that it isn't actually a meteor, but it was like some sort of spaceship that crashed.
Yeah, that was kind of the last major revelation, was that it was probably like the alien spaceship with the faster than light drive or whatever it's supposed to be in it, that the aliens really want back.
Yes, apparently they have a copyright on that technology.
Yeah, but we're getting way ahead of ourselves. But
yeah, so we're on this ship, and the ship suffers serious damage when an alien attacks it. It turns out it's the robot, and the Jupiter's all kind of abandoned ship. A few of them crash on this planet, one of which is the Robinson family. They immediately crash into a part of the planet that's currently under snow and ice. The ship hits the water, which is going to ice over like in seconds. The mother hurts her leg, and that's kind of where we start with this family. And it's so there's two things I mentioned here. First, the immediacy of the danger they're in as soon as they crash, and then this sort of formula that develops where almost in every episode there's a goal and some sort of major hurdle, usually planet originating from the planet in some way, whether it be the climate or some sort of species or whatever, and they spend the episode sort of dealing with that specifically. Which, you hear that, you're like, well, that's kind of television writing, isn't it? Well, to a degree. There are some that deal with, that there isn't necessarily a giant hurdle that they're singularly dealing with for that one episode. This one, that's kind of almost the entire series, wouldn't you say? Like, there's some sort of, just here's an example. Later on, mid-season, they're going to deal with getting fuel from one of the crashed Jupiters, and they spend the entire episode first having to get there, then then trying to figure out how they're going to transport it back, and then they're going back, but then the planet is dealing with increased seismic activity, so there's these geysers bursting, and then the fucking thing tips over, and it nearly kills a kid, and it just goes on and on and on like that. And the next episode is something equally bad, and they're dealing with that too. So, what did you think of like the first 3 episodes? Because for me, it was a bit of a slog, but just sort of the overall structure of the show.
Yeah, it's kind of like they took a key from The Martian, for example, where, like most of the problems they face are basic survival problems, like how are we going to get fuel, where are we going to get food from, like there's a storm coming, how do we survive? It's all that kind of stuff, as opposed to, there's aliens coming and they're not friendly or something like that, which can be very compelling, like in terms of figuring out, how do we survive this situation? How do you get more fuel and so on? But yeah, it takes a bit of time for you to get into the show. Granted, most shows at the beginning, they're still figuring out the characters and how the story's going to work, and it's usually pretty awkward in those first few episodes. But yeah, overall, the actual what is happening, I was fine with. It was more sort of the character developing, which I think we'll get into a bit more when we do the character section of the show.
Yeah, I think for me, the first 2 or 3 episodes were a bit of a slog. That first one especially. This was actually the second time I've attempted to watch the show. The first time it was pre-CPAP, so I kept falling asleep. That was part of it. But it's the one setting aside from when Will ends up in the forest and he meets the robot. But you have this just one snowy setting. You have the characters mostly being still, so it's very dialogue driven. And in the beginning, the dialogue loosens up definitely throughout the series. But in the beginning, I just thought it was very stilted. I love a good science fiction show, and I really enjoyed The Martian. I'm going to science the shit out of this.
Yes.
It's good stuff.
Yeah, that is one of my, if not my most favorite film I've ever seen.
And so I enjoy a good sciencing of things. But this, to me, felt like a half an hour's worth of material that was stretched out over an hour. And I did not find the characters that compelling to start with, to begin with. And so you have the stilted dialogue, non-compelling characters, a very static setting to deal with. And then the major hurdle that they have to deal with is that Judy jumps into the this body of water to get something out of the ship that they need so they don't freeze to death, and the water immediately freezes over. So she's stuck in the ice, and there's a lot of close-up shots of her just being stuck in there. But while there's an immediacy to that and there's tension, I don't know these characters that well, so I'm kind of like, okay, well that's a terrible thing, and I'd hate to be there, but I don't know you that well, Judy. I don't know how I feel about you being stuck in the ice.
Yeah, if she died in the first episode, we didn't really have enough time to get attached, so it'd be like, well, that's sad, because, kid dying, but, okay.
Judy Robinson, we hardly knew ye.
Yeah.
So there's that. Penny becomes a much more likable character as the series progresses, but in the beginning, she's a bit bland. Maureen, who starts to show another side of herself as the series continues,
like a personality.
Yeah, it doesn't really have one in the beginning. The father comes across as kind of a dick, and he softens up over time. It was just the worst first date ever. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Well, like as I mentioned before, the original show, it was your very typical '60s nuclear family, where father knows best. The kid, Will's got heart of gold, but he's still just a kid, and mom's back at the homestead, cooking up a storm or whatever. It's just this very sort of ordinary family. And then when they went to do the movie in '98, they hit on the great idea of let's make it a dysfunctional family. So now we kind of got this drama, this family that isn't really working cohesively, having to work cohesively to survive, the various situations. In the '98 film, they sort of had it all that the family was more resentful or at each other's throats. Here they're more like separated, so they're very distant from each other, which is kind of why I think it comes across as not that interesting, because there's no real emotional connection between any of these characters. Whereas in the movie, there was an emotional connection, but it might be I hate you, Dad. You took me away from all my friends to go on this stupid mission.
Right. So they eventually do get out of the ice, though. Will meets the robot, saves the robot's life basically because he's cut in half. And then
the robot, not Will.
Him, yes. And then him and the robot make it over to the ice just in the ta-da nick of time to save Judy. And the robot becomes sort of the loyal dog of the family for a little bit.
Yeah.
Boy, when we get to the bit where Will tells that thing to basically kill itself, I don't want to get ahead of myself too much, but boy, I've got some opinions. Anyway, and so then shortly after, so now they're out of the ice, and now the next thing is sort of getting the Jupiter out, and there's like these eels that eat the fuel, so everyone's out of fuel basically. Right.
But I have to say, considering that they flew that thing out of the ice and halfway around the planet on just the fumes and the fuel lines, wow, what kind of fuel are they using in these things?
Magic.
Pretty much, yeah.
I think the episode ends with them flying the ship out of the ice, and so the next episode is them kind of taking stock, and then that's when they discover the eels. So they've got to deal with that situation. Now, along the way that we and here's where I think we're going to break from the plot of this thing and talk a little bit about characters, because I do want to spend some time on this one. Shortly after we meet this family, we shift gears to another set of people. There's Parker Posey's June Harris, who is posing as Dr. Smith. and she basically took on the identity because she was a criminal. She killed her sister to get on the ship.
I think she just paralyzed her.
Yeah.
Yeah. She took her sister's spot on the ship.
Yeah, she assumed her identity
in a not very nice way.
And then in the midst of the chaos, where Dr. Zachary Smith was injured or whatever and was asking for help, she took his identity and got on board one of the Jupiters, and she is now actively trying to put up this front so that nobody finds out that she's who she is. And then because what we learn about her is right before the attack happens, whoever was running the show up there, captain of the ship, had said, "We really don't have a system of laws for dealing with you, so I will throw you off the ship into deep space."
Well, he said that there's no real law or procedure for what to do with her. So on the one hand, it's we can do anything, but also we can do anything. So he's
What did you think of that, by the way? Just that detail, because I kind of thought that was a bit of hooey.
Yeah, you would think that they would have some sort of system for what to do. I think even for a colony ship like the Resolute, spacing someone just for being sneaking on board, being a stowaway basically is a bit much. And when we eventually meet Dawn, we find out that there are staff that do go back and forth along the route. So I would assume they would just stick her in the brig until they get back to Earth and then deal with it there.
Well, not only that, but.
Yeah, but he never explicitly says we're going to space you.
He alludes to it very hard.
Yeah.
But the other side of that is, and this was a bit of a problem I had with the writing, they couldn't seem to make up their mind if Alpha Centauri was a brave new world or was kind of a British colony, if you catch my meaning. When we established colonies over here in North America, it was still under British law.
Yeah.
It was just an extension of the Empire. And I never got a sense of what Alpha Centauri was, because they would talk about it in other episodes where it was it's this great... I like the pro and con conversation the family has. They talk about, what are the pros of Alpha Centauri? We can start all over. But they keep going back to, but there's people already there. I never saw the movie, but I think it's Elysium, where you have the haves living in the sky and the have-nots living on the ground. It kind of comes across that way, where, again, if you, another allegory for fucking immigration, if you've got money and means, you can go to Alpha Centauri and start a great new world with more resources, or if you've got nothing, you get to stay on the dirt planet that's dying. Terrific.
Yeah, I think it's more classism, but yeah, they don't really establish if, I would assume that the impression I got was, on the colony in Alpha Centauri, it's not like there's native Alpha Centaurians there. This isn't like Avatar, where there's a native culture there that we'd be messing with by setting up a colony. Because look how well that turned out for the last time we did that. Right? We're still trying to figure out how to deal with this thing, but that's another podcast. So yeah, it sounds like there's already people there. They're already setting up a colony with a society there. And they're expecting more people. So I never really found that to be that much of an issue. And that is kind of one of the things that appeals to me about space colonization is, you look at the moon and Mars, they're just big rocks. There's no existing life there. So, yeah, we can basically go there and do whatever we want. And, we're not really harming the local environment or population.
Right. Yeah, I have to wonder whether, because it's a very well-written show for the most part. And I will tell you that as this built up, there gets to a point about mid-season where almost every episode to the very end would leave almost like a cliffhanger to what's going to happen next, and they hooked me hard, and I had to break in the middle of watching this to do other stuff around the house, and I found it difficult. I'd say, I'm only going to watch this one last episode, and I'm like, oh my god, and I'd have to watch the next one because I couldn't take not knowing.
It's almost like they planned it that way.
Well, that's the weird thing, is that a bingeable series like this, I wonder if it was intended for Netflix or if they shopped it around and this is just where it ended up. But, this could very well have been on Showtime or HBO or something.
Yeah, but I think it is a Netflix original, though. Not just they're calling it a Netflix original.
I know Legendary Television was one of the studios that put this out. Well, the point that I'm bringing up here is that in terms of like bingeable structure, they definitely made it to where you don't want to stop and you want to go all the way through. But it would have worked just as well as a weekly series. Hook you to come back. Whereas some of the Netflix stuff doesn't necessarily do that. The episode kind of ends, and you're like, okay, well, if I can watch I can wait to watch the next episode. I don't have to binge it all the way through. Really, it kind of depends on the show. But anyway,
there have been other attempts to get a Lost in Space show started. I think Fox was going to do one, but that fell through, and I think they sold the sets to Battlestar Galactica, where they became the Pegasus interiors. I think in the '98 movie, they were hoping to start a series off with that, or at least movies, but that never happened, unfortunately.
And now they have the Orville. Fox does,
Disney.
Yeah, Disney, yeah. Fox, Hulu, whatever name you like.
Yeah,
anyway.
maybe they'll buy up CBS Viacom and they can merge the Orville and Star Trek into a new show called Star Trek,
and then make them fight Star Wars.
Nah, I think that's a bridge too far, but
you never know with Disney. They've got plans for your childhood. Anyway, so let me go back to good old Parker Posey here. So anyway, so she crash lands under this assumed identity, and she's trying to make sure she doesn't get summarily executed or whatever they're going to do to her. For what she does commit murder. When she gets found out up there, she gets found out by one of the guards or whatever, and she promptly spaces him. So at the very least, she has a current murder charge weighing against her. Alongside her is this mechanic called Dawn, and they pair up together for a little while. They meet what's her face, Angela, who has been knocked unconscious, and her husband was killed on the Resolute. And they all stick together for a little while until Parker ditches them and goes on her own. June does. I'm going to go back and forth between the actor's name and the character name.
Yeah.
June does. Now, so the people listening to this will be like, where is he going with this? Okay, here's what I want to talk about. She spends the entire series, because she's calling herself Dr. Smith, everyone's asking her, what is she a doctor of? And what's the best thing she can tell people? Fucking psychology. Because then she doesn't have to demonstrate she knows anything. But the other side of that is it allows her the ability to get people to talk to her, and she can use that information against them when she needs to. She becomes especially malevolent towards the end of the series with that. She's... For the most part, she's laying low, but when she has to manipulate people in certain situations, for example, she starts to discover through Will and the robot that, the robot is protecting Will because Will saved her life. So she creates these series of events, this chain of dominoes, to where the robot will cause problems or harm somebody or whatever, and she will convince Will that the robot needs to be disciplined in some way, and Will then tell the robot to walk off a cliff, at which point she can save it, and it'll become her protector, and she no longer has to pretend. And she won't then summarily be punished for the crimes that she's committed. This takes place literally, I think, through episodes 4 through 10.
Pretty much.
And she's so good at it. I don't recall Parker Posey being, this phenomenal in anything else I've seen her in. I'm going to give you a chance to respond when I look up her filmography, but she was absolutely amazing this. I was really enraptured in her performance.
Yeah, certainly of all the actors in the show, she does the most heavy lifting.
Yeah.
Yeah, and yes, the scenes where you see her talking to people and manipulating them, it can be quite chilling just how good she is at it. I forget exactly because it's been a while since I watched the earlier episodes, but I think it was possibly a bit of a leap expecting Will to discipline the robot by destroying it, basically.
I had a real problem with that. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, like that was kind of like, okay, that was like foresight to the level of you being the writer.
And we can take just a brief aside in a minute to talk about that, but I want to make sure we've really covered this. I mean, she's got quite an impressive resume here of TV and film. I didn't realize she had done so much. A lot of like single 2 to 3, 4 episodes on different television shows from 91 until 2018. Done a lot of films. A lot of stuff I have never heard of though.
Yeah. But yeah, she's experienced and accomplished.
Right. But like I said, like she was Kitty Kowalski in Superman Returns, for which she won a Saturn Award for Best Supporting Actress. So I guess I shouldn't be surprised she's as good as she is. But I think she really gets to flex some acting muscles in this, and she's pretty incredible.
Yeah, definitely. I can't really blame her for the performance. You know, she did the best she could with the character she was given, and like it's a decent character. Though, most of my complaints about Dr. Smith are kind of like her place within the story and just how much of a threat she is.
Well, talk about that a little bit. What do you mean?
Sure. Well, yeah, so in the original Lost in Space, it was the Jupiter 2 goes off, and Dr. Smith, I forget the exact reasons, he's basically hired or has some motivation to sabotage the mission by basically reprogramming the robot to destroy everything, once after the ship is launched. But, something goes wrong and he ends up trapped on the ship after it launches. So obviously him not wanting to die means he helps them stop the robot, and, now they're stuck with Dr. Smith. In the original show, Jonathan Harris's character, Jonah Harris, hey, that's interesting, coincidence. He kind of was played more as this kind of like a bumbling, not quite a fool, but like someone who is very in for it for himself, not actually evil. Like he wouldn't kill the Robinsons at all, but it was more like if there was work to be done, he'd find some excuse out of it, like, oh, there's this terrible pain in my back. I'm so sorry, I am unable to assist you. And then he'd basically go off and do his own thing, often with the robot and Will in tow, with Will kind of looking up to him as like an adult. So with that childlike respect, and then the robot kind of calling him on it, and then him, giving these hilarious cutting insults back at the robot, like I did at the beginning of the show. So he's kind of like more of a comedic character that would he would be a nuisance. He'd create trouble, trying to do things his own way. But you never really felt that this guy is going to like be their destruction. When we got to the movie where Gary Oldman, Gary frickin' Oldman, took on the character, he was a lot more sort of Machiavellian, like I'm in this for me and me alone. All of my actions are for my own self-preservation. So he was a lot more of the character of he would slit all their throats while they were asleep if he felt that would help him get ahead somehow. And that sort of created like the problem of Dr. Smith, where you have this character that is a very large threat to the survival of the rest of the family, and they don't have the means of like putting them in a jail. I mean, you can lock them in a room on the ship, but how long can you keep this person alive on your ship for when you're lost in space? This is a pretty small ship. It doesn't have a brig or anything like that officially. And in the movie they kind of dealt with some of the morality of that. Of Professor Robinson does like point the gun at his head and is just about to kill him, and all the kids are looking on, and Smith says, you can't do it, can you? You can't kill the man without becoming the monster. And that is sort of the like, what do we do here? He's a threat to us, but we can't kill him because that's the morally wrong thing to do. And we never really got a resolution to that in the end because they never made another movie. And here again we have Parker Posey's character, where they sort of show that maybe she didn't have the best of upbringings. Her family seems to be wealthy, but you kind of get the sense that she was never really a valued member of that family, and she took to a life of crime and rebellion or for some reason, and she's just made a lot of bad choices that make her untrustworthy by the populace, which also makes her not trust anyone, which is why she has this mercenary attitude. And she sort of has this sort of what's the word I'm looking for? not psychotic. Geez, we should add David forgets a word to the Radulich bingo here. Like she's kind of like this psychopath sort of thing. Like that chilling moment where she's talking to the robot. It's like, I'm a good person. I'm not going to hurt anyone. I'm not going to kill anyone.
Yeah, She's very personality disordered. She's very borderline, very antisocial. She has qualities, I think, of both. She's definitely a sociopath.
Yeah, maybe that was the word I was looking for. Yeah, she's and that kind of you worry about having this character around because like she needs to have some form of redemption. Mm-hmm. Just the same thing with the Gary Oldman Dr. Smith in the movies. There needs to kind of be this moment where the Dr. Smith character goes, okay, my current path, my current philosophy is not going to lead me to a good end. I need to change my ways. Not necessarily become a wholly good person, but at least become someone who isn't going to kill everyone at the first chance they figure it's in their best interest.
Well, that's the thing with her is if nobody had figured out what was going on with, like, her main thing was making sure the robot was on her side.
Yeah, because the robot is the most powerful weapon available, and she says, like, people will like me if I have the robot, because if they don't, I can kill them.
Right. So that's it. She just needs this large gun.
Yeah.
And after that, I mean, she says a couple of times throughout the series, as long as so basically, she's Samuel Jackson from the end of Pulp Fiction. If everyone's cool, I'm cool. It's just like
and once she does get the robot, she's even like, oh well, we can still be friends. And Will's just kind of like, no, you lied to me, you manipulated me, and now you're holding my family at gunpoint.
Right. This does not bode well for friendship. But like I said, she. Her point of view is, I just need to have this gun to protect myself, but I'm perfectly willing to make friends, so long as you don't piss me off. It'll be
as long as I'm holding all the cards.
Right. And as it turns out, though, her plans get thwarted. Things turn on their head. There are things happening with the family itself that run counter to her immediate and long-term goals, which causes a great deal of friction and some tying up of hands and feet. But let's go ahead and take a quick break here. I'm going to throw to an ad, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about the actual Robinson family. Why we're all here? You know what I mean? We're gonna talk about that and sort of what they bring to the show. We'll talk a little bit more about what would possess Will to have a robot walk off the cliff no matter what was said to him, but we'll get there. Hey, everybody. I really do hope you love the Radulich Broadcasting Network. Did you know that you can actually get paid just for listening to this podcast? I know it sounds insane, but it's true. We just discovered this free new app called Podcoin, and it literally pays you to listen to podcasts. Here's how it works. You listen to podcasts, and you earn Podcoin while you listen. Then you turn that Podcoin in for gift cards at places like Amazon or Starbucks, or if you're a good person, you could even donate that Podcoin to charity. The more you listen, the more you earn. Here's what you do. Download the app right now on iPhone or Android, and I have a special code for you. Simply use our code MARKWED5. That's capital MARKWED 5. Capital MARKWED 5. MARKWED 5. And you'll get 300 Podcoin just for signing up. And if you listen to enough of us on there, you can get a cappuccino at Starbucks or an Amazon gift card on us. So go ahead and go listen to this podcast or virtually any podcast on Podcoin. And sign up with code MARKWED5. I swear it'll change the way you listen to podcasts. So Molly Parker as Mission Commander Maureen Robinson, the aerospace engineer. After the first episode or two, she starts... I think my frustration with her as a character was definitely her bitterness towards the husband. And not knowing enough about, it's established, I think, fairly early on that he re-upped in the Navy, And again, the show, I think because they're saving some stuff for the next season, they don't really get into a whole lot of why things are the way they are. And so as a viewer, I had some issues at times with the way the characters were interacting. Like, I don't know enough about the dad to hate him as much as this woman does, and so to me, she just seems terrible.
I pretty much agree there. Maureen is not a likable character as the show starts. She comes off as very cold, distant, condescending, kind of somewhat of a know-it-all. I think I have no problem at all with let's make her like an aerospace engineer, so she's really smart with the science. She's kind of the leader of the family, so to speak. But yeah, there's no like warmth to the character. You don't really feel like this is a mother that values and loves her family, and then the way that she's fairly hostile towards I think it's John is the husband at the start, whereas he's also distant in his own way, but he's not, you don't really feel like he deserves what he's getting from her,
right? And so it's a frustrating beginning. Like I said, the show gets much better. It's almost like a direct line diagonally up from very, very low in the beginning to very, very high towards the end.
Yeah, there's kind of like a hockey stick sort of thing where it's kind of a bit flat at the start and then it starts to shoot up towards the end.
So as you learn about these characters, like I said, they started fairly irritating. But her in particular, once that gets established and the show starts to progress and she starts to soften and she takes a couple of beatings herself, particularly when she's trying to figure out why the sun's going down faster and faster, and she suddenly realizes the planet's going to pieces because there's there's a black hole somewhere. No, there was two different problems. I think the sun was going out.
Yeah, it's like the sun's going to go nova or something like that. But yeah, and in the way that we're sort of shown the backstory very piecemeal throughout the series, sort of makes it harder to grasp the family dynamic here. Like in the movie, for example, they very quickly established why this family is dysfunctional.
Right.
We very much learned that, dad's a workaholic. He's not there for his kids. Daughter's right there with him. Penny is a teenage girl who's, on this mission, and she's upset about having to leave her family. Will's super smart and wants, attention from his super smart dad, but his dad's never there, so he's angry about that. And Maureen in the movie, she's just there trying to keep everything together and, not quite working that way. And so, within like the first, 10, 20 minutes, okay, we know all these relationships and why they are the way they are. And, then we're good for them to start, building how those relationships change throughout the film. Whereas here, we don't know why is Maureen angry at John.
Right. We don't know why he opted to re-up, or the toll that took on the family. We just don't know enough about their life, to warrant this level of hostility. But like I said, it softens up over time. And what I was alluding to was, there's a part of the episode where she's trying to figure out what's going on with the planet and why there's all of this increased seismic activity and just all the natural problems occurring around them. And so she builds like this hot air balloon that she goes up in, and at one
it's
point
like a weather balloon.
Yeah, at one
was
point,
it a hot air balloon? Yeah, anyway, it doesn't matter.
No. And at one point the wind blows almost like a hurricane wind, and she goes for a ride and has fucking burns on her face for the rest of the series, which I thought was pretty hilarious. And it's just like, okay, I can like this woman. She's not so bad. And then you learn why things are the way they are. Like, oh, well, now I have sympathy towards you, and I feel bad for not liking you in the beginning. But I wonder about the writing of that. Why the writers would sort of twist it that way to where you just start off so negative with this family, and then it softens over time when you're like, oh, well, those feelings were kind of misplaced in the beginning, but it's a weird way to composite the show. In any case, I really came to like her towards the end. She gets a lot of good hero stuff in the last 2 episodes, dealing with June and trying to save her husband, and she has a lot of really fun. They definitely gave her a lot to do, as far as being a lead of this and a hero, without making her seem like a shrew or shrill or anything else like that.
Yeah, there's a little bit of that towards the beginning where, she did kind of come off as a bit, I wouldn't quite go all shrewish, but that level. But yeah, once you sort of she gets to have these bigger problems to solve, we kind of see that, yes, she's good at sort of breaking down what needs to be done, figuring out the best course of action, consulting others for input onto what to do, and then like executing the plan. Like, she knows when it's like, okay, I need to be like cold and methodical here because we have no ability to screw this up. Like when they're training, John and Dawn for how to, do the launch there. It's like, now's not a time to be touchy-feely. Like, we need to get this working. If not, we're all going to die. And it's mostly like when she has to go up against Dr. Smith and the robot at the end where, it's very much, you are threatening my family and I'm going to do whatever I have to protect them. That's sort of more where you see her, becoming, okay, she is a mother. She does care about her kids. We do get the flashback to her, giving away some classified information to some shady people because Will, failed his test to be eligible for the program. And that sort of culminating with, when Will has to go outside the ship to close the door and saying, you've protected me all this time. What's the point if I can't protect you when I'm old enough?
Right.
That was a very fast, let me grow up and let go arc. But
hey, listen, I'm all about putting down the lawnmower parents.
Yeah, or helicopter parents. Yeah, I think a lawnmower parent would be bad.
Do you know what the phrase lawnmower parenting is?
No, that's a new one. I've heard of monster parents and helicopter parents. I haven't heard of lawnmower parents.
Helicopter parents hover.
Yeah.
Lawnmower parents clear a path so that there's nothing, so that their children don't have to deal with any problems.
Ah, got it.
Very, very bad.
Yes, much the bane of like every college in North America.
Just for the sake of
no, their idea is different than what I believe in. This is horrible. I don't know what to do.
Homework. What do you mean? I don't understand. Let's talk.
Quick, I need to turn the government into my parents.
Let's. Oh boy. Let's talk.
Yeah, let's not go there.
Good old John Robinson here, who again we have this very sort of weird storytelling with him, where the impression you get from him is he's a bastard and kind of acts like a bastard in the first episode, but even over time you realize that he's pretty much a good dude, and he's just trying to do what's right, and he obviously felt, to the degree that we're told his story, he felt compelled to lend himself to the peacekeeping movements. I know it's kind of an Orwellian phrase because what he did was he rejoined the Navy. But again, there's kind of a throwaway line from Maureen at one point where they talk about, governments have stabilized. And so there's this idea that there's chaos in the world, and he felt compelled to do his part to do something about it. They kind of allude to the fact that there was something going on in their marriage to where he felt like, let me just get the fuck out of here.
Yeah. I don't think we ever really found out what the inciting incident was for him. Mm-hmm. Him leaving them to serve in the Navy more.
I don't know. I think you can sort of fill in the blanks with how some marriages work, where you feel like you have this strong boss in one member of the couple, and the other one just feels displaced and disempowered. And they just feel like maybe it would be better if I wasn't here. And I'm not saying people should break up their marriages. I'm not saying, that those are good things or wise decisions. I'm saying this, in fact, does happen in the world.
Like maybe they weren't able to really sort of work out the dynamic between the two of them very well.
Right.
Like sort of like a two tigers on one mountain sort of situation.
And I guess he may have felt, certainly it's alluded to, and you can kind of see that tension in their relationship, that like, well, I'll go where I'm needed. and I'll contribute to the family from afar because that seems to be the only way we're going to work. Look, I've heard of plenty of people say, as far as man and wife go, they do much better as friends living apart than they do as a married couple living together.
Yeah.
I've heard that plenty of times. So, and that they love each other and that they are friends. They just can't live under the same roof. It doesn't work. Too many chiefs, not enough Indians, that sort of thing. That's kind of the sense that I get. And then when you start getting some of this information, whether direct or alluded to, it really softens his image. And he himself, plays. He deals with the eels, and he does a lot of manly things. And even the bit where once they've introduced the robot, there's this really nice bit between him and Will where he makes Will basically build a monument to the people that the robot hurt.
Yes. Yeah, it's like a lot of people are very quick to throw the SJW thing down the moment that they see like a female character with any authority or intelligence in anything. And
no, Dave, I have no idea what you're talking about.
Yes, who would ever say anything about that? But I can see where some of it comes from, but one thing I really look for is not so much the women characters, it's how are the male characters depicted in relation to them.
Right.
Like for example, Captain Marvel, she banters with Nick Fury a lot, but Nick Fury holds his own.
Right.
They have a good back and forth there. It's just she has superpowers, he doesn't. All the superheroes. Anyway, let's not go down that path. So in this case, yes, Maureen, she's very smart. She's definitely scientifically a lot more knowledgeable than John is. But John in his own right is an intelligent person, and he is a badass. Like, he is good at what he does.
Yeah.
Just in this case, he's not the science guy, he's the soldier.
Yep.
And we sort of see that where he starts to bond with, I think it's Penny, who he saves from the eels, and she sees her dad wrestling this thing and stabbing its eyes out, and she's like, wow, Dad's a badass. And he's doing this to save me. It's sort of, I think he's given this sort of opportunity to sort of show how these skills that he has sort of can support his family, where they can sort of see what he does.
Right. I think the problem, where you get a lot of hostility towards women as strong characters from your male viewers, is the male is then always depicted in contrast as a bungler.
Yeah, it's the male is sort of castrated, for lack of a better term, to make the woman character look that much more awesome.
Right. And where I think this show is very successful is that once you get to know them and you get past a lot of the initial with these people, you realize that they actually balance each other out. It's actually a very traditional view of, man being the strong physical presence and woman being more ethereal, intelligent, forward-thinking part of the duo, and they both have their strengths and they both have their weaknesses, and so they work in concert with one another.
Yeah, and it's kind of just them coming together and sort of realizing that, hey, we do have these complementary skills. Maureen is good at, like I said, all the science, all the technology and planning stuff, but when you have this sort of a physical threat to the family, this is where Dad kind of needs to step in and deal with things.
Well, even with the piloting, she realizes that. I mean, look, it doesn't. Great strength is often depicted as lifting a huge thing, killing a thing. But he shows great constitution and strength in his ability to recover when being knocked out by the G-forces.
Yeah, so I think on average, women are actually a lot better at dealing with G-forces than men are.
Don't confuse the issue with facts.
Yes, but it was a story point. I get it.
Obviously, I mean, she'd have been in the damn ship herself, and I think that was part of the writing of this. Is we can't have Maureen do everything, and and Dad's just sitting there like, I don't know what to do. That's kind of the point of the story.
Yeah.
And so while she's organizing things around this, and drawing up these plans for rescue, he actually has to go out and execute the damn thing.
Yeah. Yeah, and for example, when you saw them both when they were trapped in the chariot under the tar pit, and then having to survive together, and again trying to figure out the various ways of getting out, And it gets to the point where he's like, no, like, we have a spacesuit here. You go in the spacesuit. I'll open the hatch. You get out there. I have to make the hard choice here. Only one of us can survive. You're the better choice. And
even at that, I think she figures out that, or one of them figures out that there's another way. And again, physically, then he has to take the lead. Like, I can't remember who figured out that they.
I think it was Maureen had the idea. Yeah, she figured out the using the helium.
Right.
And let me just say, like, all throughout it, I was like hoping, like, at what point are their voices going to go funny? And they never say anything until right when they get out of the situation. Then it's like, I love you, and then they start laughing. Just like perfect timing on that one.
Yeah, it was a very well written bit. Unless you have any burning desires about him, I want to talk about. I got to get this off my chest.
Just before you go into that, the only other thing I'll really mention is, like when he starts to bond with Will over sort of understanding, the concept of being responsible for the taking of life. Where he sort of says, like, okay, you can have the robot as your pet, but it's not a pet; it's a robot, an alien robot that it can kill everyone, and it has killed like 30 people already. You doing that, you are taking responsibility for that power. So he says, so that's why he has them, like, build that monument to the people the robot killed. That you need to understand the weight of the responsibility here, and that I think comes from his military background, and that's something where he's able to share that with Will. And we even see that pay off even more when later on Will sort of asks him, sometime can you tell me how to defend myself?
Right.
So it's him being able to be himself and use that to sort of reconnect with his family.
Taylor Russell as Judy Robinson. Look, nothing against the actress. I actually thought she did a phenomenal job with this character. Especially in that that first thing where she has to act so much with her face because she's trapped in ice.
Yeah.
She really she definitely made me believe she was suffocating.
That was creepy stuff. Like, that is not a nice way to go.
No. So this is not a knock on Taylor Russell. She's great, and she deserves the Saturn Award that she was nominated for. Her character, Judy Robinson, sucks, and I wanted to punch her in the throat.
Yeah, like, can we just say, like, guys, please stop blaming actors for the characters they are playing.
and I don't mean sucks like written badly. Like, in other words, like not fleshed out. Two of any one particular characterization. I mean, like, her character in that sense is fine, but her character is just an awful human being. And what really clicked this for me, because for the most part she's pretty okay. She definitely comes across as condescending, a little, not entitled per se, but definitely on a high horse. But what really put her over the top for me was when they were transporting the fuel back from Don's Jupiter, and then you have the Indian fella who's eventually the troop leader.
He's the assigned commander of the mission, or the head colonist, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, and the colony representative, I think, is what they referred to him as.
Yeah,
and he's like, greater good. Okay, we need to get off. We need all of the fuel. We have a finite amount of fuel. We need X amount to get off the damn planet, or we're gonna die because you won't have enough to get through the atmosphere, and you'll burn up. So it was unavoidable. They wasn't. What happens is they're driving along, and these geysers start blowing up from the ground because, again, the planet is on its way to dying within the next month to a few months. They don't really know how long it's going to take, but basically the planet's cracking apart. Think Genesis from Star Trek 3, but not quite so fast. And God, for like half the people listening to this, what a dated reference that now is, and that makes me sad.
Yeah, to those of you that don't understand that reference, watch Star Trek 3. Better watch Star Trek 2, then watch Star Trek 3.
And then watch Star Trek 4, have yourself a good laugh, and then stop watching Star Trek movies.
Then watch Into Darkness and realize what a hackneyed job they did taking the plot elements from Star Trek 2.
Anywho, so they're driving through this field of geysers, and they nearly make it. As they're driving along and bumping, things are coming loose. There's a there's a brake line that disconnects. So one of the kids in the mission has to jump out and reconnect the brake line. If you don't know how tractor trailers work, don't worry about it. But there's a brake line that can come loose, and that's what happened.
It connects the truck to the trailer so they can work the brakes on the trailer.
Right. So that comes out. He reconnects it, but just as soon as he reconnects it, they hit a geyser. And so the tanker then tips over, and he's trapped underneath it. Now, here's the problem. He's trapped underneath the thing. When it fell onto a large stone, which then punctured the tank. And here's the riddle they're dealing with. If they right the tank, they're going to lose more fuel. Right now, the only thing keeping the fuel in the tank is the stone. And so I believe they have an either-or situation. Right the tank, pull the kid, try to save him, lose whatever fuel they're going to lose, but then patch the hole. Or lose none of the fuel, call up another tanker, I think, from base, and then they were going to transfer the fuel to that, but he would have most likely died, which he ends up doing anyway. And here's the thing. That's a suck shit kind of, what do you do? Do you do the option A, which kills the kid, but probably saves all the other colonists? Or do you do the immediate humane thing, which is save the kid, and then figure out what to do after the fact because now you don't have enough fuel to save all the colonists?
Yeah, it's the butcher's arithmetic. If I do this many people die, and if I do that many people die. Which one saves the most people? There is no good choice here.
So now Judy plays a doctor basically, even though she's 18 years old.
Yeah, she's been given the medical training for the mission.
Right. So what ends up happening is the call is made by the colony representative that they're just going to call another tanker, and sorry, kid, sorry about your damn luck, we'll do what we can for you, but you are not worth the lives of every single other colonist that's wrecked on this planet. And she argues her point. She loses. People are willing to make that sacrifice and move the fuck on already. And she instead whines and complains and is everything I hate about characters like this, and is shrill and is ridiculous and basically browbeats poor Don.
Yeah, this is a feelings matter more than facts sort of situation.
Yeah, just twist this poor guy's arm.
Now I got rid of all the rest of our listeners.
And so they end up lifting the tank, and exactly what I said happens. They lose half their fuel.
Well, what makes it even more dumb is the way that Dawn lifts the tank. He doesn't just lift it up a couple of inches so they can slide the guy out and then stick it back on the rock so it punches it. He lifts it all the way over onto its wheels again for maximum fuel loss.
Yeah, with no one standing there preparing with a bucket or anything to kind of try to press it against the tank as it's going up to keep the damn fuel in. Nope, I'm just gonna sit there and watch it gush out of the tank. It was really a stupid scene, but what bothered me, like I said, the most about it was that kind of a character drives me insane because. That single-mindedness, and here's the thing, and this is an issue with the writing, there's never any payoff to that. She basically, the kid ends up dying anyway while they're en route back to camp.
I was actually kind of happy about that because, serves you right.
And that's the thing, I'm fine with that end of it because, okay, lesson learned, but it's never addressed again. There's never any repercussions for it. She's not made to suffer because she's now wrecked this rescue attempt.
She's basically killed everyone on the planet.
They're worried about everything but that. And like I said, she doesn't learn anything from it. She's I feel bad that I don't even know if she feels bad. She feels bad the kid died. She couldn't personally save the kid. She's got this really almost sociopathic, myopic view of her own self-worth and and things only mattering to her. And, there's no redemptive quality about it. There's nothing that happens in the rest of the series that makes us go back to that and go, okay, well, without that happened, and then these changes wouldn't have occurred.
Yeah, she should have learned a lesson about having to make the hard decisions.
Right.
Or
None of that happens.
Like that. Yeah, there should be a character arc somewhere around there.
No, she's as flat and ridiculous and shrill of a character in the beginning as she is at the end. Only at the end, they don't make her do anything stupid.
Yeah, she's kind of just there after that.
Did not like this character.
Well, yeah, I didn't. That moment did a lot of damage to that character. I can't say I liked or hated her outside of that moment, but that was definitely like
I never got past it.
You messed up. Yeah. It's like you. Yeah, that was a horribly bad decision. I understand the emotional reasoning behind that, but yeah, it's like we have one person's life versus the life of everyone. Like it's just and I'd like to think if I was the kid trapped under that. That tanker, I'd be like, I don't like this, but, I understand. I got dealt a terrible hand here, but, it's better I die than we all die.
Right. Real quick thing on 15-year-old Penny Robinson. Mina Sundal does a great job with the character. She has charisma for days. She's very likable after that first episode.
I just can't remember a single thing she did.
You know what? This has to be at least one character who's trying to be a human being. And
I think I remember most of her just her interactions with the other kids, where she just seemed to kind of like be like a cool sister who's just, like kind of holding the kids together.
Well, here's the thing. My complaint about a lot of sci-fi or sci-fi fantasy is people not acting like actual people. They act like. They act like their title, and they don't act like a person. And so, like, you have Star Trek, where, in some cases, some of those characters were way too stilted and one-dimensional. Certainly, you had that in Star Wars. And even to a degree, you sometimes get that with this show, where I feel like they kind of just stay in one lane character-wise, and they don't really stretch or veer out of it. Whereas... she's very much this character who's like, well, I'm stranded on a planet. I'm still a horny teenager, so I'm gonna try. So I'm gonna try to make nice with the cute boy, and I'm a flirty girl, and I'm a silly pants, and I'm all these things, and these things didn't stop being a part of who I am because we went to space.
Yeah, well, with shows like Star Trek and like these are, adult professionals who have been trained. Like to do this kind of work. So, yeah, there's going to be this degree of professionalism there, and sort of they're able to sort of detach themselves from things to sort of do what needs to be done. Not all the time. There's certainly plenty of emotion in Star Trek, but it's a different place.
You're not wrong, but it doesn't make for a lot of dynamic ensemble performances.
Yeah, well, that's not really what Star Trek is known for, despite the worst efforts of the writers of Discovery. Let's write dynamic character interactions. Does anyone here actually know how to? No, but let's do it anyway. Just get them to cry more. Who cares that we haven't given this scene any setup? The music's epic.
You're making it very hard for me to ignore Star Trek Discovery because now I'm feeling like I have to see this just to talk about it with you.
I so want to do a Discovery show. I need it's therapy at this point. Like I tend to be like pretty reasonable. Hey, it's okay for you to not like things. Just don't enough of the petitions and the drama and you destroyed my childhood. Discovery is the closest thing to making me foaming at the mouth, enraged about, like you have taken this beautiful thing that I love, that I think is one of the best things artistically we have created, and you have dumbed it down and failed at the most fundamental level, and it pains me to see it.
I may have to...
The Family Guy is doing a better job of making your show than you are.
You may have. We may have to discuss this because I gotta see this show now. It sounds terrible. Anyway, but back to the show we're actually talking about.
Yes.
So I love the fact that you have this one character who reminds the viewers that these are human beings, and she's very much acting like a 15-year-old girl, which is what I was afraid of in the first episode because they're so smart. It's such a smart family. We have a doctor, and we have people talking about, hey, doesn't magnesium burn it? They're doing... Yeah. There's a lot of sci-fi science talk in the first episode.
Yeah, it's a bit lower down than sci-fi science talk, thankfully.
So I'm like, oh, God, is this the whole series? Which is, I think, what I was afraid of initially. which is why it took this long for us to talk about it. Aside from
technobabble is like the accepted term for that stuff.
But even if they're talking from a place of scientific accuracy, it's like I don't really want to see teenagers talk that smart. You know?
Yeah.
I sometimes have this problem with Sabrina the Teenage Witch because they're the only high schoolers I've ever seen who are this into what they're doing in school and this smart and like, come on, I don't know. Maybe I just didn't. I wasn't surrounded by smart kids in school.
Yeah, I'm going to go on a limb here, Mark, and I'm just guessing you weren't one of those kids.
I had my moments.
Yeah. But yeah, as a kid that was a bit more brainy in school, yeah, it's not the only thing brainy kids talk about.
Well, I think that's my point. Like I think when the environment and the situation calls for it is one thing, but
you can be the brainy nerd and still want to get laid.
Right? Yeah, boy, you said it better than I did. And that's what she is. That's that character. And so a lot of her stuff is flirting with the boy, and then the boy breaks up with her, and then she's
reconnects with him, but then dumps him anyway.
Right. And so there's that little bit of teenage, high school angsty stuff that I really liked because it broke up the technobabble, it broke up the hurdle of the week thing that they're dealing with.
She was just a person,
right?
Like a regular person in this situation,
right? And
just trying to get by.
And the show fucking needed it. Because between the science people, the action people, and then the sociopathic the sociopath criminal, I'm like, can't someone just be fucking normal on the show? Oh, there you are. Fantastic.
Yeah, I could see that her becoming more of the emotional core of the show.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Last character, and then Burning Desires, and then we'll close it out here. Maxwell Jenkins. Poor Maxwell Jenkins. 11-year-old Will Robinson. Like I said, there were times in the series where he reminded me a little too much of Jake Lloyd. And
it's a haircut, isn't it?
And I'm often that didn't help. And I'm often reminded of Robert Winfrey going, the one thing you don't want in your film are dogs and children. I don't know how good of an actor he is. He's apparently been in a number of TV projects: Betrayal, Sense8, NCIS New Orleans, Chicago Fire. I mean, so he, looks like he's also been nominated for a Saturn Award. So somebody thinks he's a good actor. So I don't know if it was his acting or his characterization, but he was a little too earnest for me. A little too
mopey,
a little too feminine. And I know that might have been a part of his characterization, as this is he might have been the boy raised by women yearning for a father to teach him to be a man. And so some of that just might be my reaction to that sort of thing. Which is fine, which is why I don't want to be like, he's a terrible actor, fuck this kid. Because I don't think that's necessarily the case. But I think a lot of his scenes were like, where's the fast forward button for me? Like, I just needed to get through them.
Yeah, he's
a little nails on the chalkboard for me.
Yeah. Oh, excuse me here. Yeah, I just... Oh, geez, chain of thought not working well tonight. But yeah, he's... Yeah, he is the one character that didn't make it through the training, right? Like, Maureen had to pull some strings to get him through.
Yeah.
Maybe he was a victim of lawnmower parenting. But yeah, and he's only 11 and he's being put in all these, pretty dangerous situations here. So yeah, he's kind of like the weak one, the guy who's not really supposed to be here, but he is. So he's just kind of in over his head. He's freaking 11, so... like you can kind of understand how, like he's not going to be portrayed as like the most competent and sturdy of characters, and I think most of his best stuff comes from just him interacting with the robot.
Have you seen the trailers for Good Boys up near you?
Yes. Yeah.
I much prefer kids like those.
Yeah, they feel like actual kids.
Yeah,
I think.
This one, he's just a bit of a wuss.
Yeah, and I think like the arc they're going for with him is him like toughening up over time.
Sure, and it was accomplished, and I think towards the end I softened on him as well, because he does man up, but he does it in the most sulkiest fashion.
Yeah, Rome wasn't built in a day, man. Like, like he took some steps towards,
You're right.
Towards it, but yeah, he's still pretty foolish. And like as dumb as Judy's whole "let's destroy all our fuel so we can save this one guy," Will sort of like, "Hey, we have a cave full of apex predators that are incredibly sensitive to sound. I'm gonna bring in my loud screeching radio in case my dad is alive." Which he's going to send me like a pulsing, screeching signal on, into this cave. Like at that point, I was just like, you know what, guys, just leave him. Like he's just going to get you all killed. At least Dr. Smith you can reason with. This kid, it's just like no, why did anyone just say, look, Will, you do not bring that thing into this cave?
No, because we needed an action sequence.
Yeah, and again, like there's like no consequence for this at all. No one just looks at him and says, "You idiot."
Yeah, I think if I have one major
Dad's alive! Yay! Oh, Dad's alive! Oh, we should have believed in him. It's like, dude, he blew up in a rocket launch in high, like just outside of the atmosphere. It is completely and totally reasonable to expect him dead. Now, what happened? Where did he survive? Totally physically possible. Not very, but you could do that.
They find out. So here's what happens there, and I did actually want to talk about this by itself because I think if there was one like visceral oh shit moment for me where I was like, oh, no, like I really emotionally reacted to something. It was when they're doing this launch, and John has to respond to Maureen's commands because they have gutted this ship so that whatever fuel they do have will break the planet's atmosphere, and be able to signal the Resolute, which they can't get in contact with. It's one of the hurdles of the week. So in any case, they gut the ship to make it as light as possible. They put Don and John in there. John's going to pilot. Don's going to vent the fuel. And it's just like this is going to work, but it's going to work by the hair on the skin of its teeth. And so he has no guidance system. They're essentially doing a 1960s style launch here. They're launching a tin can with two people into space.
Except they actually had guidance systems in the 60s, but anyway.
Just going by what the show says, people.
Yeah. Sorry.
It's fine. So she has to act as his guidance system, and I forget why she. Oh, that's right. She doesn't want them contacting the Resolute because she doesn't want to get caught. So she knocks out Maureen, and
Dr. Smith we're talking about here.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah,
and she knocks her out at a critical moment where John doesn't know whether to go right or left, and instead of making a 50-50 choice, as Don suggests they should have, he just says fuck it and ejects them both. So. But you don't know that. At the end of that particular episode, you just see the Jupiter blow up. And it's quite some time, I think, this is towards the end of the series, but it takes a while for them to resolve whether or not John and Don made it. And as it turns out, like I said, they were ejected, and they happened to be just, floating in space with a little bit of the ship.
Oh, they were in orbit.
Yeah. So, not a science guy. Have you figured that out yet? So anyway,
yep.
I like my science.
I can give a relatively quick explanation if you like.
Nope, we're gonna go with my asshole explanation.
Okay.
So there they are, just wandering in space. No, they're in orbit around the planet. A little bit of the ship with them, and they're going to set off a flare in space so that somebody sees them or whatever the case may be. In any case, why did I start talking about that? Other than
we were talking about Will and the radio, and why he used the radio, and we were on the topic of Will as a character.
You know what? Now I've lost my train of thought. All I know is I loved that whole bit, and it really hooked me, and I had this really visceral reaction to it. Anything more about Will? Now that I can't quite remember what my connection was to one thing or the other.
Yeah, as much as he does grow a bit by the end, like I already mentioned, the part where he tells his mom, "Look, let me do the dangerous thing for once and save everyone." and but like the bit where like once the robot sort of does its heel turn with Dr. Smith, take a drink, everyone. Yeah, and then he kind of tries to reach out to it to like play catch again, and it doesn't. And then he's like, it's not my friend anymore. It's not my robot. I don't care about it. I don't want to be friends. Mm-hmm. Like it seems like he's completely given up on the robot now. And then when like the robot ship for some strange reason powers up and comes after them with another robot on it, unless it was a different ship. It's not really explained. And then the robot kind of goes back to being an evil alien robot. And at that point, for some reason, he just stands up to it and it decides, oh, hey, I want to be friends now. And Will wants to be friends now. It's kind of like, where the heck did this come from?
Yeah, there's a lot of plot contrivance and armor in this show, which this will lead me to my kind of final thoughts on it. Here's my good, bad, and ugly. The good, for the most part, aside from the kid, who blame it on you can kind of blame it on the characterization, blame it on his ability. I don't quite know where the needle lies there, but almost everybody else gives really great to phenomenal performances. Really strong acting the whole way through. Very compelling. The show looks nice. I don't have any major problems with the CGI. Nothing really stuck out to me as maybe Robert Winfrey has a finer eye for this sort of thing. Will tell you differently, but nothing to me looked out of place or weird. I thought the show had a nice aesthetic. Once they got out of the snow, they got to change the scenery a little bit. Kind of looks like the Northeast in the fall for the most part. But I like the look of the show, and after a little bit of mucking about in the beginning, I really liked the story that was being told. The bad, though, is there's way too much information all over the place. This is not the most linear of shows where the action taking place on the planet is all linear, but it's kind of done like Arrow, where there's or Orange is the New Black, where they interrupt the narrative to give you background information via flashback, and different characters are having flashbacks, and it's all over the fucking place. And it gave me a headache at times. I don't particularly like that style of storytelling. Not to mention the fact that a lot of times they don't give you enough information to really be an informed viewer, which is a fault of the writing. The other thing, and this is, again, with regards to Penny, with regards to Will, a lot of stuff happens with these characters that either has no payoff or no consequences. They deal with the immediate, a character does something dumb, their pants catch on fire, they proceed to put the fire out, and then the issue is summarily dropped and forgotten about and has no further consequences, as if to say, please stop playing with matches, dummy. They may not actually play with matches again. There may not be any more matches in the show, but it's like things are just happening in a vacuum. I have a major problem with that element of the writing.
Yeah, say what you will about Game of Thrones, that's one thing it got completely right, is everything the characters did had consequences. If you did something stupid, you got messed up for it, and you learned your lesson. Right.
Everything kind of got paid off along the way, and I think, we talked about this in the actual Game of Thrones TV party, which is in the archives if you all want to listen to it, you Podcoin people, where people felt like their characters' conclusions were unearned. I disagreed with that. To this, however, if it had ended with just episode 10, I definitely would have felt that way. It felt like some of this stuff where the characters got to, either they didn't go anywhere. Like Will has a fairly good arc. Penny has no arc. Judy has no arc.
Yeah, despite needing one.
The dad and the mom have an arc together and to a degree separately, which is fine. But that's kind of it. And so I feel like this was a show where in the back of everyone's mind they wrote it with the intention of we're going to have a few seasons to work some things out. And I don't love that. Be prepared to end your story at the end of season 1. I find that when I do these TV parties that the first 2 seasons of a show seem to fit cohesively as one long narrative. And I don't know if, but you never know when the axe is going to come down and they're going to say, no, Swamp Thing, you're only getting 1 season. Don't introduce a new character at the end.
I sense some bitterness there.
More on that Tuesday.
Yeah.
So that's it. I'll give you the last word. I mean, overall, I like the show. I was definitely more interested as things gone on. I'm anxious to see what they're going to do with season 2 now that they've, taken the family to the bad guys part of the galaxy, presumably. But in future seasons of this thing, write like your last episode is your last episode. Maybe keep a few, it's a few irons in the fire to pick up with in the next season if you get one, fine. But don't just utterly not pay things off that you're doing. Your thoughts, sir?
Okay, well, one character I would like to talk about before we sign off here is the robot.
Okay.
Because the robot here is quite a bit different than any previous versions of the robot. One, it's an alien robot, and two, it doesn't really have much of a personality. Like, it only really says... Danger, Will Robinson. Danger, Dr. Smith, and friend Will Robinson.
It's a dog.
It's kind of a dog here. In the original series, it was just like the robot that helped out on the ship. Like every Jupiter would have one.
Yeah, it's kind of an R2-D2.
Yeah, I mean, I like the idea of it's an alien robot, so it's a bit mysterious that way. And why did it attack us? And can we trust it? All those elements, that was really good for helping the story, but yeah, the robot itself hasn't really become much of a character yet, and I assume it's going to show up in some form or another in the next season. But yeah, having sort of its connection to the aliens, and we eventually realize that, the asteroid that crashed at the beginning of the show, or it was actually an alien spaceship, and they were able to get the hyperdrive core, whatever the heck it is, out of it, and that's what's powering the Resolute, and the aliens want their stuff back. And, at the end, we get them taking another one from the crashed ship on the planet, and it merges with the Jupiter 2, which is sort of setting up the whole how they get lost in space thing, where now we have this alien technology that we can't control, zipping us around the galaxy, I assume. So, that was kind of neat stuff, but, I am kind of, missing... the personality of the robot, and even in the movie, they brought back the original voice actor for the new robot, which is one of the most awesome robots in movie history. They kind of started to bring that back. So you got the big danger, Will Robinson, danger, and a bit of the comedic banter back. So I'm curious to see where they take this robot, if they're going to develop more of a personality, get it to talk a bit more. The voice is just, it's okay, but it's no way near as iconic as the original.
I just thought they wrote the robot very inconsistently, and I think that's why it escaped me to really talk about him. I don't really understand this robot. So let me lay this out for you, because maybe I'm a dummy and I missed something. It's entirely possible. It attacked the Resolute to get the hyperdrive back. The warp engine, whatever we're deciding we're going to call it.
Hyperdrive seems to work.
And then, somewhere along the line in attacking the Resolute, it too crashed on the planet and then split in half, and then we have, and so in the tree, it looked like it tried to attack Will, but then it also figured out, well, I'm dying, so whatevs, and then Will, having sympathy on this being, makes it so that it can reconnect itself, and now it owes a what's the thing the line with Chewbacca?
Life debt.
It owes a life debt to fucking Will, so he becomes its guard dog. A la Chewbacca.
Not all the changes Disney made were bad, guys.
And then,
hey, you're in a cage. I'm in a cage. Hey, you seem cool. Let's hang out. Okay, let's go.
And then, which I didn't really talk about this, but we're getting to the end here, so I'm just going to say, I totally don't believe Will is this stupid to make the robot walk off a cliff. But he does. Yes. That's the way they wrote him, and I'm screaming at my television, this is the dumbest thing ever. Why would you make this character do this? Because it seems very out of character for him.
Or not even just let it walk off a cliff, but after it falls, to just abandon it.
Right.
I get the point where he was trying to punish the robot for attacking someone.
He killed the thing. It's a kill yourself. I mean, it's a sentient being or it isn't, and if it is, you just made the kid a murderer. What are we doing here? So, and then you're supposed to have sympathy for him for the rest of the season. It's like, I don't, though. A little problem with the writing there. I don't think the writers knew what they wanted to do with the robot. Is where I'm going with this. So anyway,
Yeah, but yeah, I'm curious to see where they go with the robot and like
well, hang on a second. So
who the robot works for and
so now they've established that this thing can easily be can easily owe someone a life debt. It changes its life debt from Will to June, and then somewhere along the way at the end, as it's trying to kill everybody on the ship.
It changed its mind.
It changed its mind suddenly, like it had amnesia.
Yeah, it was almost like doing the Darth Vader watching the Emperor thing when the other robot came along.
Right. Which it was working with. They were buddies. They were working in concert, and then suddenly,
yeah, like its status light changed to evil.
Right. It's easily the worst written character in the show. I don't understand. Its motivations seem to change with whatever the plot needs.
Yeah. Yeah, so we'll hopefully the robot gets a bit better next season. I can't really think of anything much to talk about with Dawn. I mean, I like the idea of the character. It's kind of like you're more working class space guy.
This D&D party needed a rogue.
Yeah. So we'll see. But yeah, as to the look of the show, yeah, I think it looks pretty good. Again, I kind of think that the '98 film kind of had the most distinctive look of any Lost in Space property. I thought the design of the Jupiters was really good, very utilitarian. You knew the general layout of the ships and how they worked. I love that if they take off vertically, there's actually like actual rockets that pop out of it underneath to lift it off. There's like heat tiles on the bottom. Yeah, about my only real complaint about the Jupiters is it seemed to be almost like a TARDIS in that I'm pretty sure they're bigger on the inside than they look on the outside.
Okay.
But yeah, they seem like very nice, very utilitarian. I kind of like how they had the expanding sections on it, like a camper.
Mm-hmm.
Like kind of neat for a colony ship. But yeah, I like spaceships, so I really like good ship design. So props to them there. It looks like a good ship to have to base your show around. And yeah, now they have the alien technology incorporated into it, so that's going to add an air of mystery to it. But yeah, overall, I kind of view this first season here is kind of like the 2-hour TV movie pilot expanded into like 10 episodes. Because like really where the point that the show actually ends is basically now we're lost in space. There's no other people. No one knows where we are. It's just us. We've got the core cast together. We got Dr. Smith in the airlock. What's going to happen with her? Like it's not really going to be until next season that we kind of see the show proper begin its run.
Yeah, good first step. Needs work. So we'll see what happens in season 2.
But yeah, definitely room. I think it could turn into a pretty good show if they do it right.
All right. So we will also be doing a commentary for UFC 241 Cormier versus Miocic 2. This week we've got a bunch of Swamp Thing for you. We've got Saga of the Swamp Thing by Alan Moore. We've got the TV party for Swamp Thing from DC Universe, which I alluded to. Poor show. We've got a review for Thy Art is Murder, Human Target. We've got an on-trial for Swamp Thing 1982. We've got another TV party for Good Omens. And then we've got boxing coverage for Sergey Kovalev versus Anthony Yard on ESPN Plus this a week from tonight. We've got a Screaming Boy for D23. That'll be exclusive to our Patreon channel. Go check that out. It's patreon.com/Radulich, Radulich. We've got TV party for Krypton Season 2. Rage of Light Imploder. We'll have a TV party for the Banana Splits movie, which apparently was inspired by, but not a direct either ripoff or transition to from Five Nights at Freddy, which some people seem to believe it is. We've got another TV party for yet another sci-fi movie, Zombie Tidal Wave. And then we'll finish the month with a review of NXT UK TakeOver Cardiff. So that's what we got going on in August. September, I'll tell you a little bit about what we got going on. We've got our TV party for AEW All Out, their next actual pay-per-view. September is Onslaught month. We'll be doing all 4 volumes of Onslaught, one a week. And we'll close out the month with a pair of Gotham by Gaslight shows. We've got the source material for the book Gotham by Gaslight, and starting off October with a TV party for the animated movie Gotham by Gaslight. We'll have TV parties for Hannibal, Season 3, Legion, Season 3. We'll have a Damn You Hollywood for It, Chapter 2. TV party for She-Ra, Season 3. We'll have a pair of TV parties for The Dark Crystal. We've got shows for The Dark Crystal. We've got TV party for the Netflix show that's debuting, The Dark Crystal, Age of Resistance. And then we'll do an on-trial for the original Dark Crystal from when I was just a lad. A Damn You Hollywood for my favorite movie of this year, Rambo, Last Blood. And a TV party for Disenchantment Season 2. We'll have Mental Hammer of Dooms for Killswitch Engage, Tarja, Korn, and Hell Yeah. So we've got a lot of stuff coming your way. We've got a watch-along for Bloodsport, Bloodsport 2 featuring the former Dean Ambrose, John Moxley, versus Josh Barnett. So, this is your home for all kinds of TV and movie and comic book reviews and heavy metal reviews. We've got it all here on the Radulich Broadcasting Network, by golly. David, you go ahead and tell them where we can find you or anything or whatever it is you're working on these days.
I don't think I really want to be found right now. Thanks. But have you seen the 98 Lost in Space movie, Mark?
No, I have not.
Yeah, at some point it would be nice if we could maybe do something with that, either a commentary or an on-trial, or you made me watch it or something.
I'll tell you what, my Patreon channel needs new content that isn't 2 or 3 years old, so maybe we'll do a watch-along for it.
Yeah, but keep me in the loop there. Otherwise, I can't really think of too much I got going on.
I left you one.
Most sci-fi things. Yeah,
I left you one. I left you one thing to talk about.
Oh, geez, I totally missed that one. Damn.
Fucking set you up and the ball hit you on the head. David Wright will be joining us for the Superblog team-up contribution. He will watch, with myself and Jesse Starcher, Jupiter Ascending.
Oh, okay. See, that was in the past. That was yesterday for me. But
it'll be in the future.
But okay, we're uploading it in the future. Okay, don't listen to that, anyone. Yeah.
Time travel.
Yeah, and who knows, maybe sometime I'll convince you and Andrew to watch Star Trek Discovery, and then I will apologize for you watching Star Trek Discovery. But this pain, it eats me up. It must be shared. Others must know.
Are they ending it with Season 3?
I don't know yet. Nothing has been said. I know they're Picard's obviously happening. I think Lower Decks, the animated sketch comedy show, that's still happening. I'm not sure what else is going on. We'll just have to kind of wait and see, I guess, depending on what those do. There's 10 different Star Trek ideas announced. Who knows how many of them will actually come to fruition.
Right.
There's just been a big merger announced between Viacom and CBS. They're getting back together, so that's probably going to change a bit of who's running things. So who knows what effects that'll happen on the Star Trek franchise.
We'll figure it out. I will find a place for Discovery because I got to see how bad this is now, and you definitely seem like you need to scream and howl at the moon about it.
Yeah. For Andrew, it's going to be a bit of stuff he's heard before, but it would kind of be nice to kind of open up and air my grievances, though the Red Letter Media reviews of Season 1 and 2 cover a lot of those bases.
All right. With that said, I want to thank David Wright for coming on here with me on a Saturday night. Thank you for listening. If you're a Podcoin person and we've convinced you to subscribe to your network, I want to thank you for that. And we'll see you around. Be well, be safe, and behave.
Say
Hey, Metro by T-Mobile got the best deal in wireless, and it's all for you, all for me. Just switch quickly, cause Metro has 2 lines for $80 and 2 Samsung Galaxy J7 Star phones for free, plus Amazon Prime included. That's the way wireless should be, only at Metro.
Plus sales tax and activation fee. $50 plus rate plan required. Not valid for numbers currently on T-Mobile network or on Metro in past 90 days. Offer subject to change. Offer valid for new Amazon Prime members. Amazon Prime has a $12.99 per month value. Restrictions apply. See store for details and terms and conditions.
Let's say you just bought a house. Bad news is, you're one step closer to becoming your parents. You'll proudly mow the lawn. Ask if anybody noticed you mowed the lawn. Tell people to stay off the lawn. Compare it to your neighbor's lawn. And complain about having to mow the lawn again. Good news is, it's easy to bundle home and auto through Progressive and save on your car insurance, which, of course, will go right into the lawn. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company, affiliates, and other insurers. Discount not available in all states or situations.